Look, the extraordinary remedy of a divestiture doesn't take place very often, or a breakup. Let's think about the last time we heard about that. AT&T, and what do we have now? AT&T. So it's such an unusual remedy, and it takes place on the antitrust or competition side. I don't think I've ever heard it being used on the consumer protection side, which is where the data and privacy regulation lies. So the idea that you would ask for a company to be broken up for something on the consumer protection side is very unusual.
Which you could also argue highlights the fact that maybe there aren't enough regulations or rules in place where things like privacy are concerned for some of these tech companies.
Well, there's a larger question that I think we've always tried, there's been a government void in, which is this. No one's had a good conversation with the American public about what's their reasonable privacy expectation, so that we have an expectation with regard to national security information, we have an expectation with regard to some forms of advertising, but no one has actually talked about this in a rational way to the American public. Instead, people argue from the extremes, if these are all or nothing. But most of us who rely on data to run the things that we love every day, it's a more complicated question than that. So that's why it's going to be hard for them even to somebody to seek regulation, because no one's really focused on exactly what it is they want to regulate.
But was there a public consensus on the proper use of financial or health information before there were laws dictating exactly how that data was utilized?
I think there was an internal consensus, for example, in financial services about data. But I think that there's an understanding, a common understanding, that financial and health data are the most sensitive pieces of information. So people expect the highest levels of privacy. When you go anything beyond that, people have various different expectations. I think we have to have a talk about that, and no one in government, even the FTC, has had really a robust discussion about, well, what are people really expecting, and what is really happening out there? How are people really using their data?
So put the data privacy to one side. Let's come back to competition.
Sure.
They have a huge amount of market share.
Mm-hmm.
Should that be addressed in its own right as an issue?
Well, antitrust laws are very interesting. They don't prevent monopolies. They prevent the use of monopoly power in a way that harms consumers or in an anti-competitive way. So the mere fact that you're big and successful is not in and of itself a violation of the law.
So because Facebook and Instagram are free to use as services, is that argument against them therefore put aside?
No, it's not put aside, but it's also a factor. The fact that you have a free service and that people are using it, and don't forget, while there have been very visible stumbles, most people are using it very successfully, and I think that people would be hard-pressed to say if there's any technology in the past 10 years that have done more to democratize data, it's probably Facebook.